You wake up one morning full of fire. You feel unstoppable. You tell yourself, this is it. Today, everything changes. You make a plan, you write goals, you imagine a better life, stronger, richer, more disciplined, more respected. And for a moment, it feels real. But then something happens. The fire fades. The energy disappears. And the same voice that once said, I will win, now whispers, maybe tomorrow. Let me ask you something. How many tomorrows have you already spent? How many times have you waited to feel ready, only to realize that readiness never came? Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable. They rise, they fall, they disappear exactly when you need them most. But discipline does not ask how you feel. Discipline does not care if you're tired, bored, or afraid. Discipline shows up anyway. And that is where your life begins to change. Because the difference between who you are today and who you want to become is not motivation. It is what you do when motivation is gone. Think about that. Not when you're excited, not when everything feels easy, but when it's quiet, when it's hard, when nobody's watching. That is where your future is decided. Most people misunderstand this, and it's why they stay stuck. They chase motivation like it's the answer. They watch videos, read quotes, listen to speeches, waiting to feel something powerful enough to push them forward. But what if I told you, the people you admire the most, the ones who built something extraordinary, did not rely on motivation at all? They built systems, they built habits, they built discipline, because they understood something most never will. Motivation gets you started.
Discipline keeps you alive in the fight. And life is a long fight, not against others, but against yourself, against comfort, against excuses, against that quiet voice that tells you to stop when you are just getting started. Let me take you somewhere for a moment. Imagine a man waking up before sunrise. No applause, no audience, no excitement, just silence. His body is tired, his mind is heavy. Every part of him is asking for rest, but he gets up anyway. Not because he feels like it, but because he decided. And that decision, repeated daily, becomes identity. You see, discipline is not something you do. It is someone you become. And that transformation is not loud. It is not glamorous. It is quiet. Painfully quiet. Because no one celebrates the early mornings. No one applauds the sacrifices. No one sees the days you showed up when you didn't want to. But those are the days that matter the most. Let me ask you something. Who are you when no one is watching? Not who you pretend to be, not who you talk about becoming, but who you actually are in your lowest moments. Because that is your truth, and truth is where real change begins. Here's what nobody tells you. Discipline feels like suffering in the beginning. You feel restricted, you feel uncomfortable, you feel like you're missing out. But over time, something shifts. The same discipline that once felt like pain becomes freedom. Freedom from inconsistency, freedom from regret, freedom from that sinking feeling of knowing you could have done more but didn't. And in that freedom, you find peace. But you have to earn it. Not once, not twice, but every single day. Consistency is not sexy. It is not exciting. But it is powerful beyond measure, because small actions, repeated daily, create massive transformation. And here's the part that changes everything. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. You don't need to win every day. You just need to show up every day. Because discipline is not about intensity. It is about reliability. It is about becoming someone your future self can trust. Think about that. Can your future self trust you?
Can they rely on you to do what needs to be done even when it's hard? Or are you still negotiating with your own potential? Still making deals with your excuses? Still saying, I'll start when I feel better, when I have more time, when everything is right? But everything will never be right. There will always be noise. There will always be distractions. There will always be reasons to quit. So the question is not, when will it get easier? The question is, when will you become stronger? Because that is the real shift. Life does not become easier. You become more disciplined, more focused, more resilient. And suddenly, the things that once felt impossible become your normal. Let me tell you a quiet truth. Every successful person you admire has had days where they didn't want to continue, days where quitting felt easier, days where nothing made sense. But they didn't stop, not because they were special, but because they were disciplined. They understood that progress is invisible in the beginning, that growth is uncomfortable, that transformation is slow, and they stayed anyway. They stayed in the process. They stayed in the struggle. They stayed when everything inside them said leave. That is strength. Not loud strength, not aggressive strength, but quiet, unshakable strength. The kind that builds over time, the kind that cannot be taken away. Now let me ask you something deeper. What is it costing you to stay where you are? Not just in effort, but in time, in potential, in the life you could be living but aren't. Because every day you delay, every day you rely on motivation, you are trading your future for temporary comfort. And comfort is expensive. It costs you your dreams. It costs you your growth. It costs you the person you could have become. So what are you willing to pay? Comfort or discipline? Because you cannot afford both.
Here's the shift. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect. It is telling yourself, I am worth the effort. It is choosing growth over ease, purpose over distraction, long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. And yes, it is hard. But so is staying the same. So is regret. So is looking back years from now and realizing you had the chance, you had the ability, you had the time, but you didn't act. And that pain, that quiet regret, is far heavier than any discipline you will ever face. So choose your heart. Choose it consciously. Choose it daily, because discipline is not built in a moment of inspiration. It is built in moments of resistance. When you don't want to start anyway. When you want to quit, continue anyway. When you feel tired, show up anyway. Because every time you do that, you are rewriting your identity. You are becoming someone stronger, someone sharper, someone unstoppable. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to trust yourself again. You begin to believe in your own consistency. And that belief, that quiet confidence, is more powerful than any motivation you will ever feel. Let me bring you back to where we started. That moment of fire, that burst of energy, that promise to change. It wasn't wrong. It just wasn't enough. Because motivation is the spark, but discipline is the fuel. And without fuel, even the brightest spark fades. So stop chasing the spark. Start building the fire, day by day, action by action, choice by choice. And one day, you will wake up, not feeling motivated, but feeling certain. Certain that no matter how you feel, you will do what needs to be done. And that certainty is power. Quiet power, unshakable power, the kind that builds lives, the kind that changes destinies.
So I'll leave you with this. When the feeling fades, what will you do? When motivation disappears, who will you become? Because that moment, that silent, difficult, uncomfortable moment is where your future is waiting. And it is watching to see if you will rise or retreat. So choose Not once, but every single day. Because motivation is temporary, but discipline is who you become. And the moment you embrace that, everything changes. Now ask yourself, what are you ready to commit to, even when you don't feel like it?